Why do we send people to prison for being addicted to drugs? If you are in the US, it is 'cause it makes money for the privately owned prison system and continues to fuel the narrative that being poor is a crime. We don't. We send them to prison for possession of significant quantities of illegal drugs, for selling illegal drugs, and for doing things like stealing to support their drug habit. But the actual act of being addicted to drugs is not illegal. I'll answer the question very straightforwardly. We don't put people in prison for being addicted to drugs. The things they get put in prison for are the externalities of being addicted: purchasing drugs, stealing and assaulting people for money for drugs, possessing large amounts of drugs on their person. Being addicted to and using drugs by itself is not a crime. I can create an infinite amount of scenarios of situations that aren't someone's fault, that isn't really unethical or illegal, that becomes so because of actions they take. You can't just ignore the externalities because someone has a problem. If you phrased your question more specifically, like, why do we put people in prison for drug possession, then we're onto something. Because it's cheaper than helping them. We don't. We send them to prison for committing a crime. Being addicted is not a crime. Dealing with drugs, robbing other people so you can afford to buy drugs, these are crimes. And we send them to prison for these crimes so I don't become an innocent victim of your addiction. Only a few countries in the West openly illegalized shooting up drugs. Mostly you are allowed to be addicted and get high. In the entire history of the USA, you likely cannot point out one case of someone going to jail for being an addict. Possession, paraphernalia, intoxication. Yes. We don't. Simple possession or being under the influence is usually a fine and probation, requiring the person seek addiction counseling, housing, and gain meaningful employment. Any time served is usually in a county jail, not prison, usually as violations of probation. Those who do prison sentences on drug charges are usually found guilty of other offenses while on drugs: driving under the influence, assault, robbery, intent to distribute, etc. Being on drugs while doing some of these illegal acts can increase the severity of prison sentences. The question shouldn't be why imprisonment, but why doesn't our prison system offer extensive medical treatment and psychological care for inmates to reduce recidivism? That is a more interesting subject. It's the purchase and possession, not the addiction, that puts people in jail. Our justice system is a punishment system, not a rehabilitation system. It's why people come out worse than before. We don't. A lot of ignorance in this comment section. We don't. It's a stupid mantra that people repeat. Less drugs for them and more for me. You're working from a flawed premise. We in the US don't send people to prison for being addicted to drugs. People in the US who are in prison are there for being found guilty of a felony. Addiction is not a crime, let alone a felony. Because Christians don't have empathy and they make laws about it. Because drug addicts are desperate, will cause harm to themselves and others. And there are so many that we don't have other options. If the person is from a wealthy family, they go to rehab. Poor folks go to jail. Systemic racism. Drug laws were a convenient way to round up blacks and Hispanics and put them in prison. Because the criminal justice system sucks. With the exception of possession charges, which should be decriminalized, it is usually the crimes they commit in order to obtain those drugs that gets them put in prison.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.